and welcome to Diecast Restos. I'm Jason, and this week I'm doing the opposite of what I usually do. Instead of spicing up a casting to give it more interest, I'll be dulling down this Matchbox Rover Sterling from its current My First Matchbox design. I will return this to its rightful place of being unexceptional, meaning I'll certainly need to be losing these blue wheels. Here's how it would have looked when new and with a more conventional livery. This is the Rover 800 series it is based on, positively sizzling with excitement. Here's a closer look at that accurate engine bay diagram. Rather strangely, I've opted for Oz Rally wheels for this one, but I think you'll agree they actually look pretty similar to the blocky stock wheels of the Rover. So this casting first appeared in the Matchbox mainline in 1988, painted maroon with a dark grey base and headlight tampos. It remained like this for 3 years. Alongside it came a laser wheels release in silver with a blue base, and it had tampos that for some reason are based on the flag of Iceland. In 1990, it began featuring in the My First Matchbox or Live and Learn series, which was a short-lived series aimed at preschool children. They all featured bright colours and were covered in tampos. This ran from 1989 to 1993. The Sterling was dropped for the US for 1991, but was recoloured metallic silver with a metallic blue base for the rest of the world. For 1992, it had Rover Sterling printed in white on the door sills. It could be found with or without the black A-pillar tampos all mainline models had until this point. It was discontinued for 1993. A German-only issue was painted yellow all over that was available between 1991 and 1992. The Sterling could also be found in the graphic traffic sets in white. The model is based on the Rover 800 series, a British executive car that was co-developed with Honda. Both companies had formed an allegiance with the earlier Honda Ballard-based Triumph Acclaim, and both companies were now in need of a full-sized executive car. Rover needed a successor to the SD1, while Honda wanted to expand its presence in North America. At the time, Honda's largest offering was the Accord, so it needed something larger to compete with the other Japanese imports from Toyota and Datsun. Development had begun in 1981 on what would become the Rover 800 series and the Honda Legend. Under the agreement, Honda would supply the V6 engine, transmissions and chassis design, while Rover would provide the 4-cylinder engines and much of the electrical systems. Each car would have its own unique exterior bodywork and interior. The Legend launched in Japan in October 1985, and it was badged as an Acura for the US market. The Rover followed, finally launching in July 1986. It launched with a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine with 16 valves, though a single carburettor version arrived with the introduction of the Fastback 800 in 1988. Honda's 2.5-litre V6 was also available. This was uprated to 2.7 litres in 1988. In 1990, a 2.5-litre diesel option became available, provided by Italian firm VM Motori. The Sterling badge was used in most global markets to the top-of-the-range luxury versions of the Saloon. Similarly, the Vitesse badge was used for the luxury fastback versions. A brief run of just over 500 2-litre turbo 800s were produced shortly before the Mark II launched in 1991. But before that, we jump over the Atlantic to the US, where the car launched in 1987. Sterling became the brand name of the car, thus explaining the casting solely having Sterling printed on the base. The company was a division of the Rover Group. It was essentially a rebadged 800 with specifications tailored to the North American market. As such, it was only available with the V6 engines. For 1987 and 1988, like the 800, only the sedan version was available with the 2.5-litre V6 badged as the 825. The hatchback fastback arrived in 1989 with the addition of the 2.7-litre unit. These were badged as Sterling 827s. The suspension was firmed up to distinguish it from the Acura Legend. Sales were initially strong in the US due to the British interior styling, which included wood trim. However, build quality was poor, as were the electrics and paintwork. The body also suffered from corrosion on early models. In JD Power surveys, it dropped to the bottom of the rankings, while conversely, the Acura Legend enjoyed top ratings in its first year. Build quality did improve on Sterling's, but it did little to boost sales, so it was withdrawn in 1991. Just shy of 36,000 Sterlings were sold during that period. It was not deemed financially viable by Rover to introduce the facelifted 1991 Mark II model. That car launched in Europe with a more traditional Rover grille and more curvaceous bodywork. The Mark II's refresh saw sales again climb as it became Britain's best-selling executive car. Engine options remained much the same on the Mark II, though the 2-litre turbo was more of a mainstay in the Vitesse and Vitesse Sport. A two-door notchback coupe model complemented the Saloon and Fastback in 1992, which had actually been designed with the US market in mind prior to Rover's withdrawal there. Of note, Honda had produced a first-generation coupe model, but Rover opted against adopting this. In 1996, the 800 had a minor facelift, but the car was now falling well behind competitors. It sold steadily but in reduced numbers after this time, until it was replaced by the Rover 75 in 1999. Over 193,000 pre-1991 facelift Rover 800s were built, while just shy of 124,000 post-1991 cars were made. Alongside Jaguars of the era, Rover 800s were frequently used by the British government, and it was often adopted as a police vehicle in the UK. Not only that, but famed social commentator Alan Partridge drove a Rover 825 Mark II Saloon, which had some rude daubings on the side of it. Unfortunately, some vandals had sworn all over his car, writing "Cock Piss Partridge" on it. So, stepping away from the 800 series for a moment and back to the casting, you'll see that I've thoroughly removed any of the fun colours or elements that it once had. Gone are the bright blues, reds and yellows in favour of some truly lavish grey shades. The pearl light blue of the body really is the peak of its colour spectrum, that and the taillight piece. I desperately wanted to recreate that 1980s lower end of the executive market vibe. I based the body colours on the shades found on the real car from brochures and photos. Pale blue and dark grey two-tone was a genuine option. I teamed that with the light grey leather interior and also used that same paint on the wheels. Nothing too fancy, aside from the obligatory wood trim of course. I suspect the Matchbox production costs for this model must have been quite high. There are so many components and it is very well put together. It's pretty unheard of at this price bracket these days to have separate tail light, interior and beltline trim pieces. Also, the window piece has black tampos for the pillars printed onto it. And it still has suspension and a metal base. This is a top quality casting in my eyes. Prepare your eyes for one last look at the before footage. This was my Matchbox MB192 Sterling in its My First Matchbox livery. This short-lived series brought colour and fun to otherwise mundane models for very young children. But I like dull and mundane. Even as a kid, I'd prefer a realistic looking model over this multicoloured madness. So, turning my typical ethos of spicing up castings on its head, I'm customising this one to look as run-of-the-mill as can be. And here is how it now looks. Gone are the bright blues, gone are the bright reds, gone are the yellows. All are replaced by delightfully dreary 1980s grey tones. The pale blue and dark grey with black beltline is a colour scheme based on that of the real car. I've teamed it with what would be Larry Oz racing wheels that have been made to look like the OEM rims of the Sterling. The only hint of colour on this comes from the rear light cluster panel. Even the interior is grey. The side repeater is the only sign of colour from this angle. But despite its monochrome appearance, I love it. It's such a good solid casting that only needs a few hints of detail here and there to improve it. But what do you think about it? Leave the video a like if you think this is an improvement and let me know why in the comments. Tell me if you want to see more miserly makeovers like this. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't already, but that just leaves me to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.